Awesome. So it looks like people are filing in now. Perfect. All right, so let's just go to get started. So welcome everyone to the PackView Retail Bloom Q4 Marketplace Checklist webinar. In today's webinar, we are going to go over some of the tactical things that you can do right now to help you prepare for Q4. All right, in today's webinar, today's presenters will be myself. I'm a SOCCOM Customer Success Account Manager here at PackView. So PackView is an enterprise platform for brands that helps sellers, agencies, and brands manage their e-commerce advertising using our automation, competitive intelligence, and reporting tools. And with me is Nicole Reich over at Retail Bloom.
Thanks, Zach. Thank you for inviting me here today, and hello to everyone on the call. As you mentioned, I'm Nicole Reich. I'm the Managing Director at Retail Bloom. I've been with Retail Bloom for over 4 years, and today support and oversee all segments of the business, including operations, client services, inventory planning, and sales and marketing. To give you a little bit background about what we do, so Retail Bloom is a full-service offering customizable to each of our brand strategies. We have 2 different approaches. One of them being managed services, and the other being our 3P wholesale model, which you can see on the right side of this slide. We see ourselves as an extension of our brands teams and specialize in our brands teams and specialize in doing a full top to bottom marketplace approach by both doing the consulting as well as the execution. So no matter what this might be, we can either help support the brand sell on Seller Central or Vendor Central, where we don't see inventory. Or in the other flip side of it, we actually act as an exclusive preferred 3P partner and become a customer of the brands we work with. In that situation, we're placing POs on a weekly basis, and we're receiving that inventory into our warehouses for FBA or FBA onsite in Detroit, Michigan. One of the advantages that I would say that we have as at Retail Bloom is that we don't see ourselves as a software company. When I speak to our services on this slide, we leverage our software partners, for example, PackView, to help manage our businesses and our clients. So when we start with brand protection, we monitor all pricing and on all platforms, as well as enforcing policies with the help of our partners at TrackStreet. After that, we then move to content, and we manage actual feed files through a PIM tool called Salsify, which allows us to scale and move quicker, a little bit quicker through the cases that you may be having a difficult time through in Seller Central, as well as every day being able to push a feed file for quality monitoring checks. Most of the time after we get through brand protection and content, we move on to advertising, which is exactly where PackView comes in. We leverage their software to do our bid automation, as well as optimizing our campaigns and providing reporting. So lastly, what I would say, the last piece about Retail Bloom is once we have Amazon.com in the best scenario, we typically recommend our brands to move on to other marketplaces such as Walmart, eBay, and we're making Google Shopping actions a huge priority coming into Q4 and in 2021.
Thank you, Nicole. So for today's agenda, we are going to go over the flywheel effect. And then we're going to go down through our Q4 checklist, which includes inventory prep, price monitoring, content optimizations, and advertising. And then we'll cap off the webinar with a Q&A session. So feel free to type in any questions into the webinar chat, where we'll be addressing them at the end of the webinar.
Cool. So speaking to the flywheel effect first, instead of providing some traditional, I guess, Q4 e-commerce data, a lot of that has been really popular right now. We figured that we would kind of take a step back and look back to what Amazon's strategy is specifically within the flywheel effect. So this was actually adopted from the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, and Jeff Bezos and Jim Wilkie developed their own flywheel effect for Amazon back in 2001. And since then, they've always started with customer experience being the key, and this is the top priority for Amazon employees. So if we start at customer experience and we move through through traffic, through sellers, through selection, all of these, the point of this is that even though it's a lot of work in the beginning, once it starts moving, it's much more efficient, and it kind of runs on its own, creating a lower cost structure, leading to lower prices and coming back to the customer experience. So what we thought we would do today is take the same type of flywheel effect and kind of apply it to your business as a brand or as a retailer, specifically probably as a brand. So coming over to the next slide, Zach, please. We want to start with what would be an ideal flywheel effect for you as a brand on Amazon. So this is kind of best case scenario. There's no issues, which is a little bit of an exaggeration. There's always challenges with Amazon, but this would be kind of your ideal scenario as a brand. So starting with sellers, you would establish an authorized online Amazon retail policy with a controlled number of sellers, meaning you know who is selling your products on Amazon. From there, you would move on to your selection. So you've picked your sellers, and you also know your third-party sellers or your own Seller Central account or your 1P account, all providing the products that you want to have on the platform with that Prime 2-day offering. And then from there, you would go into kind of pricing. So ideally, the products would be sold at a price that is the best fit from a margin perspective for you or for Amazon and for the customer, as well as third-party sellers. And the pricing is consistent across all platforms, enabling all of the retailers to align together and not compete. After that, on the customer experience side, the brand is there, the products are there with 2-day shipping, the pricing is correct, and then you move to the PDP page or the product detail page, and all of your products are optimized with a cohesive brand approach. So videos, imagery, descriptions, variation options, all of those are available. When orders are placed, your customer service team, whether that be at Amazon or on your own team, is available to ask any questions. Preferably there isn't a lot of questions because the delivery is on time and the product quality is high. And from there, they leave a 5-star review, and that leads to an increase in conversion, which then comes down to the bottom, increasing traffic. You start ranking higher in organic keywords. You are fully optimizing your advertising campaigns. They're working for you, not against you. You're hitting your ACoS goals, and then you continue to kind of flow into this flywheel effect and eventually come to a lower cost structure because you're scaling and you're growing. So that is kind of ideal, right? That is not reality, and especially not reality today. So especially with COVID-19 in 2020 and all the challenges that we see, you may see something like this, where you have 2 issues. One of them, you have your spring 20 catalog, especially if you have some seasonality that might be sitting out in the marketplace or in brick and mortar retail stores, and you have some unauthorized third-party sellers that are popping up on Amazon who you don't want there. At the same time as that happening, you're also seeing a limited workforce, maybe at your level or the brand level or at Amazon. And because of those delays in the workforce, you're seeing delays in product launches, your asset creation, and order fulfillment, which then comes up to selection. So an example of fall 20, we all have some due dates of getting products live and into FBA, which we'll actually talk about at the end of this webinar. But a lot of the times what's happening right now is that you may have delays at the manufacturing level, which causes when the product gets to your warehouse, you to rush it to get out to the door. It could get to Amazon. There could be a delay on the 1P side with it being received, or as a third-party seller, they have to flip the product, and it's creating a ton of delays with selection and causing stockouts. At the same time, going on into lower prices, you have your fall 20 products that are kind of late to the game, but you also have your spring 20 out there, causing brick and mortar stores that were closed all season, all summer, forcing them to potentially liquidate that inventory on Amazon or on other websites, causing some suppressed buy box issues and negatively impacting your pricing integrity. And this is really obviously disrupting your sell-through for your third-party sellers or Amazon, as well as creating an unprofitable platform for everyone involved on Amazon. Unfortunately, that then affects the customer experience with the stockouts. At the same time, you have other third-party sellers jumping on Amazon, trumping maybe all of the product content, for example, that you've just worked on for the last year to create. as well as customers leaving bad reviews when they don't get their products on time. Potentially there could be some quality problems, overall a poor customer experience, which then leads into a decrease in traffic and a decrease in conversion. Your costs for your campaigns are going out of the roof, or going, skyrocketing, and it's kind of creating the opposite effect of what you're trying to accomplish. And unfortunately, this is just a few of the issues that is a reality today. So what we want to try to do in this webinar is speak to some of these challenges and give you tactical approaches to make a difference today to counter some of these what I would consider as threats. Sorry, and lastly, your lower cost structure. When there's a lot of chaos, obviously margins are tight, everyone's getting squeezed, and you're not growing because it's not cost effective. So starting with our checklist, the first thing we want to point out is selection. So the inventory and fulfillment, and we have about 4 key takeaways on this slide. The first one is that we are all facing some threats when it comes to fulfillment and challenges with carriers. So when you get the products to Amazon, they are getting delayed, and we've seen receiving times up to 4 to 6 weeks sitting at Amazon warehouses waiting to be received. When that happens, you potentially have 2 challenges. One of them, you have third-party sellers who have maybe net 30 terms and are paying for the products that aren't even live on Amazon yet. Or the other issue, which is unfortunately rougher for the customer experience, is that you're going out of stock because you're not putting enough inventory into Amazon. So the way that we are trying to get over this hump is by providing as many offerings as we can for the same ASIN. So on the right portion of this slide, you'll see 3 different options: one for FBA, one for FBA on-site, and one for FBM, which is fulfillment by merchant or merchant fulfilled. What we are recommending and what we are building out right now for our brands and us as a third-party seller is that you create as many offerings as you can, and then you allow the buy box to provide the best shipping method for the customer. So if FBA is delayed and there's backups, you have an FBA on-site or an FBM offering. Let's just say that FBM is working well, then great, FBA will continue to go through, but if not, if you stock out, you still have a fulfillment by merchant offering. I know that this sometimes is a little easier said than done, because as a traditional B2B business, you may not have a 3PL provider. And what I would say to that point is you could leverage 3P sellers that have your inventory that are doing this already on Amazon, or you could look to us and we could also help you out with this as well. Another challenge that we're seeing is that the FBA quantity limits, so especially for products that are new, seasonal, don't have a ton of history, or maybe they don't have history since last Q4, Amazon is not allowing everyone to stock up ahead of time because of the space constraints that they're seeing at warehouses. So to mitigate some of this risk, what we would recommend is trying to send replens more often instead of sending in a ton of pallets in the beginning. And this will do 2 things. One, we find that LTL shipments, if they're not going through Amazon Freight, are much more delayed than ground shipments. They take a lot longer to be received. That's what we found. And then at the same time, you're using ground, which you just have to prepare for the shipping costs to be higher than what you were expecting earlier this year. So instead of sending in, like I said, 16 pallets in the beginning of the season, you may only be able to sell in 4, and then every week you have to send in more replen orders. And fortunately, over the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks, we've actually seen these quantity limits start to go away, and would love to hear from feedback of anyone on the call if they're seeing similar things. The next step would be testing receiving and shipping times by carrier. So I mentioned Amazon Freight. Those do have to be full truckloads, but we found that if you're able to use that as your shipping carrier, it's actually getting received ahead of a lot of the other carriers that are going into fulfillment centers. Another option that we're seeing is that if you use UPS ground, there is an option within Seller Central, if you qualify for it, that is as soon as it leaves your warehouse, it is already live on Amazon. So you don't have to wait for it to be delivered to the fulfillment centers, and you don't have to wait for it to be received. which means that you're just in a better position from a stock out perspective. And then lastly, this is mostly for third-party sellers, would be to improve your IPI score. So if we go over one slide, this was actually pulled from the Amazon Accelerate sessions earlier in September. And what they found when they looked at all of the Seller Central accounts is that for sellers who had an IPI score greater than 600, they all paid less than 1% towards storage fees. And basically what that means is that those sellers are very efficient in the sense of removing slow-moving stale inventory from Amazon, making sure that they have the right SKUs in their accounts and removing any inactive SKUs, and also staying on top of their performance metrics when it comes to shipping times and quality product time measurements. On the flip side, when you're not looking at that IPI score, you're not looking at your performance metrics on a regular basis, for sellers who have a score of less than 200, they found that those sellers were paying 24% of their revenue back into storage fees, meaning a lot of the inventory was sitting at Amazon's warehouses and they weren't able to send in the products that were moving quicker because Amazon is still seeing all of this stuff that's sitting there. So that would be another huge checklist that I would start paying attention to now, and probably getting someone, whether it be in your customer service team or your analytics team, to monitor those on a daily basis. So we spoke about the challenges for selection, and now we're moving to the lower prices piece of the flywheel. And this is about price monitoring and how that affects buy box. So two quick things here is that please watch out for Amazon pricing, matching, or suppressing buy box due to other platforms. So a really good example of this, I just pulled this from Google and Amazon for this Adidas sneaker, is that they have the sneaker on Google from their actual website at $56, and they have that same shoe sold on Amazon for $80, I believe. And what that is causing suppressed buy box, where you see the available from these sellers, which isn't a huge deal if the customer is used to just clicking on the button and seeing it for the higher price, but it does significantly impact the algorithm and your sessions and traffic to your listing. So we see a huge drop in sales when we have suppressed buy box caused by pricing on other platforms. So really be aware of that. Like I mentioned earlier, we leverage TrackStreet to monitor pricing across all platforms, and it's been super effective for us. And then the next bullet that I would say is, especially if you're not the exclusive seller and you are relying on other third-party sellers or have other e-com retailers carrying your products, is I would communicate to them often about your MAP policy and your authorized retailer policy. If you plan on doing discounts or you have discount windows for promotional periods, communicate to them potentially before Black Friday and say, hey, this is our window, this is our policy. As of the day after Cyber Monday, that Tuesday, you have to come back up to MAP, and then continuously email them to let them know that you are watching it and you're aware of them if they are still violating that policy. Moving on to the customer experience, this really talks about content optimizations. And the way that we think about this and what we'd recommend is that, especially if you have a big catalog, it is very overwhelming to go on Amazon to optimize everything at the same time. It's a huge undertaking. It takes a ton of work from your e-commerce team, your marketing team, your graphic design team, and having to rush through that through Q4 isn't always the best option. So what we would recommend is updating imagery and videos first, followed by A+ content. So for example, if your product copy isn't the best, what I would say is that most customers, since over half of the customers on Amazon are looking on mobile, they're not even looking at the bullets. So if you really optimize your back-end keywords first for the algorithm purposes or your titles, you can really move on to focus on imagery and video, which is much more relevant in the shopping experience for people on mobile. So what we have on the right here is a quick study from Profitero where they measured, or they looked at 7,000 products on Amazon over about a 7-month period and found that after adding imagery, they saw a 17% increase in traffic and a 90% increase in conversion. When they added videos, they saw a 6% increase in traffic and 51% increase in conversion. And then A+ pages was a little lower than that. So if you can't do everything all at once, those are the 3 things that I would focus on. And when it comes to A+ pages, I would really focus on doing those comparison charts, because it's a free way to cross-sell and upsell to new product releases, to other product listings that may be buried in the search results. So being able to go to your bestseller and put your newest product in an A+ page, you're taking all of that traffic and directing it to another page. Another thing we would point out for content is really analyzing your Amazon store data. I think that the Amazon customer is getting much more comfortable about using those pages, and Amazon is also doing a fantastic job of adding the stores to certain places, whether it be in the actual Google search results where you could click on the brand and go to the store page, or even in the search results specifically on Amazon. So as you can see in this picture, when you type in the brand Smartwool, you now can go directly to that store page, and you don't have to force the customer to go to a headline banner or click on the small blue link that no one can really find on the product detail pages. So we found that when we direct traffic to the store, we see units per order go up significantly, because the Amazon customer is able to find and buy more than just one product at a time. And we also see that the conversion is much more higher there as well. Looking at a quick case study. So last year, we actually worked with Smartwool before Q4. I would say that this is a really good brand to look at because it's very well established. It's been on Amazon for a while. It's not like they're seeing exponential growth by just doing some small things. The main thing that we had changed for Smartwool is just their content. So imagery, videos, obviously we updated the bullets and the titles and focused on A+ pages. But on the next slide, you can kind of see what happened here. All things being relatively the same outside of the content optimization. So we finished the project up in mid-October of last year. And you can see on the left side, this is kind of their year-over-year growth. From January to October, they were only seeing about a 1 to 2% growth. And then after the optimizations, they ended up seeing 14% growth in November and December, which is absolutely fantastic for a brand, like I said, that's already been pretty well established. And most of those efforts were just from the content.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. That's super helpful, insightful info. So I'm going to go over the traffic portion of the Flywheel and how you can, some tactics that you can do to generate more traffic on Amazon. So there are a couple things that you can do right now in Q3 to help you prepare and set yourself up for success in Q4. One of them is to build your relevancy score, because you're going to want to increase your campaign and relevancy score now in Q3 to help you win placement bids later on in Q4. Typically, increased relevancy often leads to lower CPCs as well. So there are a couple things that you can do to build relevancy. One way is to optimize towards click-through rate, because click-through rate is oftentimes a signal for relevancy on Amazon. So some of the things that you may want to do is look for keywords that are getting impressions, but then not resulting in any clicks. Your initial instinct may be just to leave that alone because it's technically not costing you anything because no one is clicking on it. So you're getting those free impressions. However, those high impressions, no clicks keywords may be hurting your click-through rate and thus hurting your Amazon relevancy. Another thing you can do is optimize your detail pages with relevant keywords. In particular, your product title. That probably is where you can make the biggest impact with having a higher click-through rate by optimizing your product titles with relevant keywords. Another thing you're going to want to do is test now. So Test early, test everything, and test often. So some of the things that you may want to test include like your keyword targeting strategies, different audience segments for your sponsored display campaigns, different ad creative, different detail page copy. Test everything and anything that you can think of in Q3 right now, and then identify what are the strategies that worked in Q3 that you tested. Then when Q4 comes around, you're really going to want to lean into those winning strategies. Another thing that you're going to want to do is right now in Q3 is really drive brand awareness. Not only are shoppers starting earlier, but there are a bunch of new online shoppers doing research on Amazon. So you really want to take advantage of all these new shoppers and drive more brand awareness. Some of the things that you may consider doing include focusing more on sponsored brand campaigns to occupy that very visible spot on the search results page. In particular, using sponsored brand campaigns to drive traffic to your Amazon store page, where you can direct them to a rich landing page that has videos, great lifestyle image content. That just allows you to better tell your brand story and build that connection with the end consumer. All right, next we're going to talk about some of the trends that we saw in regards to targeting and keywords earlier in the year that we could apply into Q4. So in Q2, we found that 8 of the top 10 search terms were personal health and home cleaning related. So in Q2, when COVID first hit, there were a bunch of keywords that were in the personal health and home cleaning categories that saw a significant spike in traffic. So right now, that traffic spike has normalized. So they aren't quite as high right now as they were in Q2. However, they still remain elevated above pre-COVID levels. So one thing to keep in mind, especially if you operate in any of these categories, is that that trend is going to continue into Q4 as well, as more people are buying essential items online. So really lean into any of those COVID-related keywords in Q4. Another thing we noticed when we were looking at data from early in the year is that new to online shoppers are using more generic terms to discover more products, as well as really long tail and branded terms are decreasing in search volume. And so this kind of points to the fact that more and more people are using Amazon to start their consumer journey. And one of the big takeaways from looking at this data of increase in traffic for highly competitive generic terms and a decrease in traffic for branded terms is that as this trend continues, you can probably expect a decrease in ROAS as highly competitive generic search terms increases and high converting brand terms decrease. So you can probably, based off of that data, you can maybe expect a decrease in ROAS as less people do branded search terms. So you may want to bake that into your efficiency expectations in Q4. All right, so in this slide, we're going to talk about a really great strategy that you can use right now to help you set yourself up for success in Q4. And so to talk about the strategy, let's go over this, this great stat here where it says 80% of clicks on Amazon occur on the first page. The first 3 listings on page 1 get at least 60% of those clicks. So let's kind of break down this stat really quick. So essentially what this stat is saying is that there are 2 visibility thresholds on the Amazon search results page, where if you cross those thresholds, you're going to see a huge jump in traffic. So those two visibility thresholds are making the jump from page 2 to page 1 and making the jump from outside the top 3 to inside the top 3 on the first page. So with this strategy, what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to find those products and those keywords where you're at like just the outer fringes of those visibility thresholds. For example, if you're on the first position on page 2 for a specific product, one thing that I would recommend doing is really in Q3 right now, really work to try to get that, drive traffic to that ASIN with paid advertising to help boost it from the top of page 2 to the bottom of page 1. Because when you cross that visibility threshold, you're gonna get a huge jump in traffic with only really small increase in organic ranking. So just that, moving that one organic ranking is gonna pay huge dividends when it comes to Q4, because you'll be on the first page of the Amazon search results. So that's one thing I'd recommend doing, is try to find those opportunities where you can move just 1 or 2 spaces to cross those visibility page 1 or top 3 places. All right, so this next slide, we're going to talk about different ways to get impressions. So in this graph here, we can illustrate that that visibility matters. So every doubling of impression leads to a 92% growth in sales. So by this graph here, you can see that pretty much the relationship between impressions and sales is pretty much a linear relationship, where the more impressions you get, the more sales. So some of the ways that you're going to want to optimize your campaigns to make sure you're maximizing your impressions is to use day parting. Use day parting to make sure your ads are showing when customers are most likely to buy. Typically, kind of that e-commerce golden hour probably varies from category to category, but in most cases, typically between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Tend to be the highest converting, highest sales periods. Another thing you're going to want to do is you want to set up alerts for campaigns that run out of budget early. So within Packer, you can actually set up email notifications to get notified when campaigns go out of budget early. Because if you go out of budget early in the day, you could possibly be missing out on high sales periods later in the day. So make sure you fund your campaigns so they can run throughout the day. The next thing you're going to want to do is plan ahead and increase bids on keywords where your product drops on organic rankings. So identify those keywords where you have low organic rankings and use paid advertising to fill in the gaps to make sure you are showing up for those search terms. All right, so this next graph here shows us a day parting heat map, which illustrates the average sales per hour. And so one of the things that we see here is that definitely from the hours of 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., this is where there's an increase in sales. And this really illustrates the importance of day parting, and using day parting to possibly increase your bids on the hours of the day where sales tends to peak, and this graph also illustrates the importance of making sure your campaigns are funded throughout the day. Because let's say you go out of budget at noon every day. And if that occurs, that means you are missing out on having your ads show up on the peak sales periods later in the day. So, all right, so this next graph here illustrates some of the trends in the first half of 2020, where it shows ROAS by category for a specific category, as you can see. And one of the things that this visual really highlights is that there's definitely a fluctuation in ROAS by category. And that fluctuation in ROAS is something that's going to occur in Q4 as well. And so the thing that I want to highlight with this graph here is because there is going to be fluctuation in ROAS, you also want to have budget fluidity and be able to move budgets towards different categories that may be trending in Q4. And another strategy that you're going to want to do to set yourself up for success in Q4 is really lean into retargeting. So especially since in Q4 with Prime Day and Black Friday, Cyber Monday being so close together this year, you're going to want to cast a wide net on Prime Day and gather as much traffic as you can on Prime Day. And then you want to kind of leverage that traffic and double dip on that increase in traffic. So at a house party, double dip is not encouraged, but in e-commerce, double dipping is definitely encouraged. So you want to take that traffic that you get on Prime Day and really retarget them with either DSP or sponsored display audience targeting ads. And so really to try to get them to double dip and buy your product again. Some of the things that you can do is you can analyze the basket analysis report in Vendor Central and identify what are some ASINs to cross-sell or what is some complementary ASINs that you can advertise to get them to buy again. So for example, if during Prime Day you sold TVs, maybe during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you may want to retarget them with a sound bar. So those are kind of some of the things that you can do to really lean into retargeting. All right, and here is just a reminder of the Q4 checklist of all of the things that you can do to really prepare yourself and set yourself up for success in Q4.
Yeah, so on the left side here, it kind of focuses on some of the recommendations that I was making. Zach, if you just want to go back one second. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's okay. So the checklist on the left speaks to kind of the brand protection, the inventory offering, prioritizing images, videos, and merges first, as well as driving traffic to the store. And then on the right, it basically speaks to what Zach just mentioned in the sense of your advertising campaigns, building out your relevancy score, testing out as many campaigns as you can, preparing your budget for maximum flexibility, and then broadening your retargeting campaigns. So I believe that this will be sent out after this, but if you do have any other questions on any of these, I would be happy to go through them, specifically the ones on the left, and I'm sure Zach will do the same for those on the right. And then last thing that we wanted to touch on, these are some key holiday dates for specifically third-party sellers, Seller Central. So just as a reminder, September 18th, all Black Friday and Cyber Monday coupons and lightning deals are due for submission, which is tomorrow. And then the 23rd, all deal of the day submissions are due for the holiday season. So those are mostly for the promotions piece of it. And then October 2nd and November 5th, those speak both to dates for inventory on the 2nd. All holiday deals must be in transit to Amazon fulfillment centers, meaning they have to be out of your warehouse into getting into Amazon's. And then by November 5th, inventory for Black Friday and Cyber Monday must have arrived at the fulfillment center. So fortunately, they're not getting these deadlines as received because obviously that's completely out of your control, but definitely big dates to remember in the upcoming months. And just one more reminder on being able to replan as much as you can because you may not be able to send in everything in the beginning.
All right, now let's go through the Q&A session. So one of the questions that was asked was, what can brands start to do to prepare for 2021? And what are some of the trends that we might see in 2021? So I think definitely one of the trends in 2021 that we're really going to see is definitely a paradigm shift in the grocery category, where more and more people are buying groceries and consumables online. I mean, this is a trend that was already occurring over the past 5 years or so, but COVID has really accelerated that trend, and more people are adopting online grocery shopping, and so that's going to be a huge thing in 2021. And so what are some of the things that brands can do to prepare prepare right now for 2021? Well, one of the things that the brands can do is, in 2020, as more and more people adopted online shopping, a lot of brands really acquired a lot of new customers because there were a bunch of new people who were shopping online in 2020. And so in 2021, a really big focus that people are going to want to lean into is, what are some of the ways that you can retain those new customers and make them repeat customers and long-term customers? So that may mean like leaning into retargeting to keep your brand on top of mind for these new customers, or lead into social media engagements to engage with those customers. So those are kind of some of those things you can do to make those new customers in 2020 repeat customers in 2021.
I think one of the other things that I would add to that is going into next year is that I read something yesterday was that in early 2020, so before COVID, it was about 25% of all consumers were comfortable shopping on e-com platforms, and they just ran the same study again, and now it looks so anywhere from 35 to 40% of customers are more comfortable shopping online. So this actually speaks to Zach's point a little bit earlier about advertising and seeing kind of the trends with more broader terms happening on Amazon versus more specific, because you have a bunch of new customers coming to the platform. And what I would say is they're not necessarily coming to Amazon. They're not necessarily Prime customers. Of course, Amazon is growing significantly over the last 9 months, but you're also seeing huge growth in Walmart.com, in Target.com, Google Shopping, as I had mentioned earlier. And those new customers aren't natively, I guess, loyal to Amazon. So it's a good time to start to refocus and rethink about different marketplaces, because obviously Amazon is by far the gorilla in the room, but these other marketplaces are also really good opportunity to see incremental growth with new customers.
Okay, so I think that was, I don't see any other questions on there. So again, everyone, thank you for joining the PackView Retail Bloom Q4 checklist webinar. Hope you guys, everyone, found a lot of helpful info in here. I know I learned a lot from Nicole, so thank you for sharing all that info.
Yeah, Zach, if you want to push one more slide forward, there is my email address. Those would be directly towards me if you have any questions. And as part of this webinar, we are providing a free audit to anyone on this call. So brand protection, content, inventory, expansion. Like I said, if you are looking to learn anything more about what we've discussed today, I would be happy to have a conversation and even dive into any of the accounts that you have to provide some recommendations. And thank you, Zach, for having me today, and good luck to everyone in Q4 and the holiday season.